Welcome to this sixth episode of NEP and Budget Private Schools webinar, the series of webinars that we have been running. This is the sixth in the series. In this series, we are going to talk about the technology integration in education, education delivery, school management, looking at as the new national education policy has come up with certain recommendations for technology integration. What are the new scopes, possibilities, challenges, and how are we going to deal with this? So in this sixth webinar, this is the topic that we are going to discuss. This webinar will continue till 12:30. I would come and talk about the program flow, etc. a little later. First, let me invite Mr. John Prabhu, who is connected here from Chennai. He is from the Chennai Private Schools Management Association. He holds the leadership position. He also runs a school in Chennai, and he is a long and very active member of NISA. So, John Prabhuji, welcome to the NISA webinar series. This series is being organized by NISA, National Independent Schools Alliance, which is an alliance of budget private schools associations from all over the country. Currently, NISA has more than 50 such state-level budget private schools associations as a member, who are spread across 26 states in the country. And if we combine all of these schools in the network, the number goes beyond 1 lakh now. And if we put together the entire number of teachers and human capital included and the students, the number roughly goes to beyond 2 crore students who have we have the direct outreach with these association networks, and roughly there are 10 lakh teachers directly or indirectly involved with this network. Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal, which is partner in this webinar series, a brief introduction about Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal, that it was founded in 1969. And since then, it has been working in the space of education policy, curriculum design, system and methodology evolution. And the core idea around which Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal works is the bringing Bharatiyata in Indian education. So, welcome, John Prabhuji. This was the brief introduction about the organizations behind this webinar. I invite you to welcome formally to all our speakers for the day.
Thank you, Dr. Amit Chandra. And good morning and welcome everyone to the National Education Policy 2020 and Technology Integration in Budget Private Schools, a webinar series by National Independent School Alliance and Bharatiya Shiksha Mandal. I'd like to introduce the speaker of today's webinar. The first speaker of today is Mr. Banu Putta. He is a global executive member, world leader. He is passionate about building and growing purposeful products, businesses, and organizations which enhance human potential. At World Reader, Banu provides strategic direction and leadership for the global portfolio of digital reading products and leads the build-up of World Reader mission in the APAC region. Over 16 million read-on World Readers, digital reading products as on today. I'd like to introduce the second speaker of today's webinar. Mr. Rishi Kapoor is the co-founder of Plus One Smart School. He is an entrepreneur who has grown up in Singapore with a degree from Boston University, harbors a deep tactile knowledge of international standard, best practices. Rishi, through the understanding of Indian scenario, network, experience with the technology startups, and venture capital facilities. A strategic approach RISI has also certified with a Green Belt U6 Sigma certification and has worked closely with several government agencies to draft policy as well as future projects. I'd like to introduce the third speaker of today's webinar. My friend Ali Said is the CEO of Tech Avant Grade. He is passionate about creating a connected learning community, which is the vision of UNESCO. Mr. Said's mission is to change the way people learn. After completing his professional studies in computer engineering, he became a software engineer and later on an entrepreneur. There are scores of technology products to his credit, which has developed to completely digitalization in school education. I'd like to introduce the last speaker of today's webinar. Professor Dr. Unnat Pandit is the Dean of Atal Bihari Vajpayee School of Excellence, Management Entrepreneurship at Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has served in various fields of development, starting from research, academics, pharmaceuticals, linked to IP innovation, skill, and entrepreneurship. Formerly served as a program director of Atal Innovation Mission, Nidhi Aayog, and also served as a member of IP think tank to draft national IPR policy, OSD to Minister of Commerce and Industry. Recently, Dr. Pandit has moved from bureaucratic role at Nidhi Aayog to an academic career. His area of expertise is in managing, advertising on complexity of innovation products, services, and research and development, offering solution from concept to commercial success. Lastly, I convey my best wishes to the moderator, speaker, and participants of today's webinar for a healthy discussion with a great output from the legendary panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And let me recognize, we also have Dr. Ashok Thakurji with us, who would come at the end to deliver his thank you note once our entire discussion is over. Now, before we start this discussion, let me briefly just list out key features of the new national education policy as to what are the larger, bigger recommendations on technology integration in school education system. And in this discussion, we should also try to see what are those recommendations in NEP for overall school education changes and integration of technology, and within that, do we find the scope for budget private schools? Where is the scope? What are the challenges that we identify, and how can we mitigate and move forward? So to begin this webinar discussion, let me just simply list out what are those recommendations from the new national education policy. As we know that national education policy is the larger objective is how do we make India a superpower, knowledge power globally. It also keeps to meet the promises, something that we have promised in the UN as the goal number 4 of Sustainable Development Goal, which is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities. Now, within this larger goal that new national education policy wishes to achieve, what are the key features when it comes to technology integration? What are the key recommendations? The first and foremost big recommendation that I see is the creation of National Education Technology Forum, NETF. This will be created and this will work as an autonomous body with MHRD. Now, what will it do? The idea is this should work as one independent organization providing evidence-based advice to central and state governments as to what are the new technology-based interventions coming, how it can be planned, how it can be implemented. building the intellectual and institutional capacities to deliver those educational technologies, envisioning the strategic thrust as to where these technologies should be taking us. How do we build the domain knowledge? How do we articulate our need? How do we have the research and innovation to provide contextual and complementary knowledge using technology? So it looks at the very wider role in terms of not just content creation, but content creation, training, assessment, performance, planning, teacher recruitment, posting, all of those. So the key feature for this forum is going to be that they, number one, do the pilot studies in terms of online education. What kind of online education, how to roll it out, how do we build the contest, how do we measure the performance, how do we make it successful. Then looking at building up the digital infrastructure. Do we have enough digital infrastructure present, and how do we move forward towards that? How can we build online teaching platforms and different tools for collaboration for teachers to create quality content? And when there is quality content being created, how do we create the digital repository where these contents are available, mostly free, and how it is widely disseminated, how it is being used, how do we promote that, etc., etc. This forum would also look into addressing the digital divide, as we know that there is a huge divide. So how do we fill that gap? Could there be possibility of creating virtual labs? How do we incentivize the use and adoption of technology platforms? And how do we bring all the stakeholders together? How are teachers going to use it? How are we going to use technology in terms of planning, assessment, training, performance, management? So it is not only thinking in terms of just create content and deliver, but in the entire ecosystem, how do we integrate, imbibe the technology? One major recommendation is from the middle stage, which starts from 6th onwards. The recommendation is that artificial intelligence, design thinking, machine learning, coding, etc., will be taught to the students. Digital infrastructure for knowledge sharing, Diksha, a repository platform, it has already been built and will further be enhanced and strengthened for high quality content, specifically focused on foundational literacy and numeracy. The next recommendation is technology-based comprehensive teacher requirement and planning, which becomes a difficult part in terms of our management. We realize that where we need, let's say, math teacher, and whether the math teacher is available or not, and not just for the present one, for the future planning also. So these are just key recommendations, key ideas I wanted to bring. I didn't want to explain it much, to set the context for today's webinar. So these are not the only recommendation. Let me clarify. These are a few, the top one as a key feature I thought to highlight before we begin the webinar. And as we begin now, the program flow is going to look like that each speaker will get roughly 8 to 10 minutes to present his own ideas. But once again, keeping in mind that our audience, our focus area is mainly budget private schools. So these are the recommendations. What are the tools and technologies which are already being used? And almost all of our speakers today, they are the one who are leading those technology platforms. So through them, we would try to know how are we going to integrate it. And in that case, I would invite, let's say, Bhanu from World Reader to talk about technology integration, keeping students in mind. Mr. Rishi Kapoor, thinking from the teacher's perspective. Mr. Ali Seth, because he works on the bringing entire digitalization of schooling. So how can we think from the school's perspective? And then at the end, we'll have Dr. Unnat Pandit, who comes with a vast experience into looking at the entire ecosystem and thinking about further scope, challenges, and solutions, ways forward. How do we mitigate and move forward? So each of our speakers will get roughly 8 to 10 minutes to present their ideas, wherein they can talk about what they are currently doing and how do they see things changing in terms of this new national education policy. At the end, we would also have Q&A with our audience, our participants. More than 120 people have joined this discussion. The discussion is also live on Facebook and this entire webinar is being recorded and will be later put on YouTube too for further future reference. So this is how the program flow looks like. Let me invite the first speaker of the day, Mr. Bhanu Pota from the World Reader. Mr. Pota, all to you.
Thanks, Amit.
You can unmute yourself and start.
Thanks, Amit. And thanks, John, for the brief introduction. I'm sharing a few slides. Please let me know if you're able to see, and then we can get going.
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Okay, fantastic. So this is a vast area, and given the time we have, what I would kind of do is more focus on technology integration at the foundational phase, and I'm sure Rishi and Mr. Ali will talk a lot more about the wider system as they come along, and then we can sum it all up in the discussion, right? So a quick, dive into what has significantly changed in the foundational and primary areas, right? I mean, when we talk about technology mainstreaming into schools, it is across K-12. But if you look at in the past decade, a lot of technology intervention has happened in the middle school and above, and a lot less has happened in the primary and early education stage. So keeping in mind the fact that the grade buckets have been broken down into change from 10+2 to 5+3+3+4, the significant focus on foundational literacy and foundational numeracy, which we have to focus on as schools, is significantly going to happen in the first 5 years, which is the foundational phase, and then the next 3 years, which is the late primary, right? And when we really look at that, there are two things which really come in there. One is the ability to learn to read, and then slowly transforming the child to a capacity where they could read to learn, right? So learn to read is a first step, and then read to learn is a second step. That is the fundamental capability which we need to create in the students at that point in time. And that is a combination of not just the teachers doing some things in the school, but it is a combination of what happens at the school and what happens also at the households, right? And I'm sure
Bhanu, sorry to disturb you. Your screen sharing option is working, but your presentation is still loading. So we have a black screen. Oh. So maybe you just need to restart, or okay, you're using a web-based presentation and therefore it is taking time to load.
Let me just restart that again, and then give me a quick second. Huh. Do you see it now?
So the option of screen sharing is starting, but there is nothing on this screen actually. No, once again, the same problem.
Okay, I'm not sure what's happening. Let's I think just continue talking then. Maybe that makes more sense.
Okay, then.
In the interest of time, right? So if we look at looking at technology embedding, particularly at the early grades in the ecosystem, we have to think about the two dimensions. We have to think about the dimension of what happens in the school with the teachers, and what also happens in the household with the parents. One thing we have to keep in mind, while digital connectivity and access is always a question, particularly in markets like India, it is far ahead than a lot of other countries. If you look at the mobile penetration, and after Jio has come, the cost of data, and the behaviors of consuming content has also significantly changed at the household level. If you really look at sometimes the households, the living
These
room
are
in the
not the
household
only
is more
recommendation.
digitally equipped
These
than
are
a classroom
a
today.
few.
Even at the bottom of the pyramid, budget private school households, right? And that's a reality. We all know that we have been seeing this day and now. Now, how do we as schools leverage that behaviors which are available at home also to support the early reading and early literacy? Now, that is one thing to keep in mind. That is where we need to bring in human-centered design. So at World Reader, we are working across 47 countries right now with over 17 million readers in the household segment, right? And those households are brought on keep through the schools, and it is basically through our partnerships with schools we bring reading solutions to households, right? And we have actually worked to reverse design the digital experience. Instead of somebody sitting on the tech side or the product side thinking of what a technology should be, what we did was we spent 2 years working with over 800 parents in India, urban slums and rural locations, in Middle East and in Latin America, working with parents and teachers of the budget private schools and even the government schools and rural schools to kind of design what kind of technology intervention which is required for them, right? So there's a lot of work which we need to do in building those things. Of course, the schools may not be building those things. Those things may be built by organizations like World Leader or the organizations which Rishi and Ali are running, right? But as a budget private school owner, if we are looking at what kind of technology we are imbibing into our system, one of the things the school owners or the school leaders should remember is to look for those technologies which have been designed for the human user in mind. That is the teacher, that is the parent at home, and also the child who is the learner, right? Now, that is one aspect to keep in mind. The second aspect to keep in mind is that we are actually doing all of this thing about technology or data or AI or ML or anything we do is not for the sake of those things, but it is for the sake of learning outcomes, right? Now, there has to be a very harsh look at what kind of learning outcomes or what kind of learning experiences are being created by this technology we are putting in the hands of the teachers, parents, and children, and then kind of constantly evaluate where it is and how we can improve on that, right? Now, if we look at the health sector, the way the health sector has adopted technology is far more advanced than the education sector. And now we are also seeing that the agri sector is taking up technology and imbibing, and they are also very rapidly catching up with where education is. And if the education sector and the schools and the outreach infrastructure is slow, in the next 3-4 years, I will not be surprised if the agri sector is also ahead of education sector in terms of technology integration. But if you look at the way the technology is designed in health and agri sectors, is they are very sharply designed to the outcomes, right? Whilst in the education sector, the first few years has been about deploying hardware. Then we came into digitizing content and deploying content. The third phase where we are is that we have to deploy learning experiences, right? So that is the evolution we have to go through together. It's a partnership between providers of edtech solutions and also school owners and teachers who have to constantly work with these service providers and constantly share feedback in terms of what is working, what is not working, so that the service providers can improve, craft, and redesign and sort of almost co-create solutions. In that perspective, in 2019, we actually co-created, working with NISA, a digital reading solution called NRead for the early grades, nursery, kindergarten 1, kindergarten 2, grade 1, and grade 2. And at that time, we didn't even know that the new education policy is going to break up the structure in this way. But if in hindsight, what NISA and World Leader was doing was actually futuristic and in line with where the policy was heading. So we created a program called NRead, which is basically creating access for curriculum aligned storybooks for early grade children. So if there is a water concept which we need to teach in EVS, what are the stories which the teachers and parents could use around water while introducing that concept. And we all know culturally, anything which comes and starts off as a story for us, we remember the crux of that ages after. And that builds into the lifelong learning objective of what the NEP is all about, which Amit pointed out at the start, right? So using stories as vehicles to anchor learning concepts or ideas into the child's mind, and then slowly using the interest of stories to create reading capacities to meet the learning outcomes is what NREAD all about at the foundational phase, right? Now, that program is running, like I said, in many countries, and we have over 17 million readers right now. In India, we have already rolled it out to 34 schools in partnership with NISA. And then as we go forward, we will be expanding that a lot more. And in the true sense of it, we have designed not only the solution, but even the commercial model and the service model around that solution, working with school leaders in NISA, right? And that is the approach which we need to take in terms of the partnership between edtech players and the ecosystem of school owners and school leaders has to be co-creators and not like a supplier and a vendor relationship. And that transition is super essential for us to make. And when we're able to make the transition from a supplier vendor to a co-creator, we will move from deploying technology, deploying content, to actually deploying learning services and learning experiences, which is what we need at this point in time for India and to build this nation into the future. I will pause there and then give it back to Amit, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of conversations as we go forward.
Thank you very much, Bhanu, and especially thank you for keeping that within the time frame, which is very nice of you. Basically, if I try to summarize everything that you talked about, is in terms of 4 key points that I take. Number one, we need to work with parents and teachers. Without engaging them, no technology, no implementation, no integration, nothing could happen. Second, I think a wonderful perspective I get from you is see how the health sector has integrated technology, and it is so focused on delivering the outcome and what could we learn from them. Agriculture sector also has started adopting, and we need to kind of fasten our pace in education sector as well. If education sector is left behind, then that's a huge problem. The other key thing I really like about World Reader is while it is taking technology, but the method that it uses is simple storytelling. And through storytelling, how can you build the conceptual understanding among the children? And that builds up the foundational learning, right? So that's also wonderful. And the next thing is, once again, we all cannot work in silos. We all have to come together as co-creators. So specifically, edtech companies have to work with schools or educational institutions and likewise. And this has been actually my learning also over a period of time, working with NISA and working with multiple edtech companies. I have seen those tech companies who actually come in education have not been as impactful as much education companies adopting technology. So maybe this is my observation over a period of time.
Yes, that's
but
right.
Now
that is a very important observation, and it's not just an observation we see in Asia, but that is the observation we see across Africa, Latin America, and even the global north. We see that the partnership, whether you're two legal entities or you're a blend of, you start as an education company and add tech, or you start off as tech company and then you bring a lot of educational talent into your organization, whichever way you journey, it is high time that edtech is for education first and technology as a support base and not the other way around.
Right. With this, now let me move to the second speaker for the day, Rishi Kapoor from +1 Schools, +1 Smart School. Rishi, all to you, your 8 to 10 minutes.
Great. Thanks so much, Amit. Thank you so much, John, as well. And thank you so much, Banu. I think exactly whatever that you've said today, I completely agree with everything. I think collaboration is the key, whether we look at a public-private partnership, whether we look at a private-private partnership, or whether we even look at a public-public partnership. The ultimate goal is collaboration is the key, and that's really going to drive the upliftment of the entire ecosystem. So thank you, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen also with you. I hope you can see it.
Yes, it is visible.
Perfect. So just to give you a quick overview of our company. So we're Plus One Technologies. We're a software solution company. The first product that we've created is within the education space. We've derived a lot of our knowledge through education experts, and we've used a lot of kind of subject matter experts to help in creation of our ERP solution, which really helps with the facilitation and collaboration across all stakeholders, whether they're administrative departments, management departments, or even parents, teachers, and students. So as we all know, currently India is an important place in the global education industry. It has one of the largest networks of education institutions across the world. However, there's a lot of potential for the further development in the education system. With the ease of learning, the flexibility, and a wide range of study materials, there needs to be an influence in the overall growth of the industry. So if we look at the key market macroeconomic drivers that are driving technology growth and adoptions across the Indian education industry that we've seen so far. So a few of these include the smartphone user bases, the increase in disposable income that is being seen across all industries in tier two and tier three cities as well. Our growth in our terms of our young population, the cost of online education coming down, as well as the availability of quality education getting more and more available within the market. Apart from that, looking at the ability of vocational training programs and how that ties into the employability quotient, and tying in that with all of the government digital initiatives. So internet and digital devices remain crucial for the further penetration of technology across India. And if we look at the role of technology within the NEP, so on multiple aspects, including the need for early childhood care, as well as inclusive education and revamping the current curriculum. However, there is an inherent thread that runs throughout the policy in terms of the interplay of education and technology. So within the last decade itself, India has become an information hub. It has become an information transformative society. And there's a growing requirement with regards to the usage of technology in terms of education. The policy basically steers education system in the sense that they talk about how we really need to inculcate technology and inculcate teaching, learning, removing language barriers through the implementation of technology, as well as increasing access, education planning, as well as management. And the current pandemic itself has taught us that we need to think about how virtual learning experiences will replace in learning experiences, even though we have to keep in mind the human element. So within primary education itself and in budget private schools, if we talk specifically, there is a really important aspect in aiding teachers in terms of bridging the gap in terms of technology. So there's a lot of language barriers that take place. There's a ability for them to not understand also how to upload into digital libraries or creating content or popularizing language learning and getting basic access. With the smaller tier two, tier three cities, what things we've seen is that with lacking access to infrastructure, lacking access to internet, what is happening is that teachers are able to run Zoom classes for particular amount of times, or they'll run a class on WhatsApp currently. But even those classes are not being able to be executed to the full amount of functionalities that is required to really impart that education or impart that knowledge to the student itself. So developing core competencies and developing core capacities through tech interventions and technology is the key, essentially. So if we come to the key concerns, so in terms of internet penetration, in terms of digital devices, those are a few key concerns, and electricity, having access to them, is a few key concerns. But the major concern that really we see on the ground is the concern of teacher understanding of how to use the technology. Teaching them is one aspect that definitely is a crucial aspect. It takes maybe a month period, a 2-month period, a 3-month period to really get them to understand how to utilize the solution. But even when they come to understanding how exactly to utilize the solution, they are unable to drive it to where they need to take it to impart that education. So we really need to see education be imparted through gamification. We need to see it through online examinations. We need to see it through a lot of evaluation metrics that the teacher has the ability to undertake, so that they can really kind of take forward what the student is learning, whether that is actually being understood, and whether they need to then promote them to the next year, or if they have not mastered those concepts, then what is that they need to refocus on, re-educate, and reteach the students to get them to basically understand those core concepts and not really focus on memorization itself. So we need to also look at the ability of the Digital India campaign and the ability of the affordable computing devices. So in terms of mobile devices, yes, in terms of tier 2, tier 3 cities, we're seeing a lot of penetration and the growth is growing exponentially. However, having only one device in a household again limits the child, again causes the limitations for the teacher itself as well, to track, to monitor, and to also understand exactly what is taking place within the household itself. So if we come into the role of technologies within the budget private schools specifically, so we understand that technologies will drive engagement. Teachers will be further engaged and they will further be able to engage students. After that, the engagements will drive learning. Once learning takes place, this will be able to drive soft skills, hard skills, and then the employability. And then the employability will overall garner a better quality of life. And that quality of life will relate to the upliftment of the entire ecosystem from the current situation of a developing country to a more developed nation. So within schools, we need teachers to absolutely drive engagements. We need to use the advent of technology, and we need students to have better access to the quality education and at the same time be able to achieve equitable growth and development. So not only this, but technology also needs to drive transparency in terms of teachers. So parents need to be understanding as well exactly what teachers are doing, whether they are evaluating the homework, whether they're not evaluating the homework, whether they're committed. So we need to look at it in terms of both aspects. The first aspect of whether the teacher is actually being engaged in the platform, whether they're assigning the homework, whether they're assigning the materials, so on and so forth. And then we need to look at it from a third party perspective of where the teacher should also have the transparency to see exactly what is taking place, to understand that what quality and where their current student lies in terms of understanding. So just to conclude, I want to move on a little bit about our solution as well, so I can tell you about exactly what we're doing. But we really need to focus on learning without hindrance. We need to focus on sharing of knowledge. We need to focus on the ability of having learning aids for teachers, for them to understand the technologies and how to utilize the technologies. And we need to understand the concept of distance learning, as well as the ability to do planning through the implementation of technologies. So as I mentioned to you, the first product that we have created within our solution is the +1 Smart School solution. So what we do is we connect all stakeholders. We, whether they're parents, teachers, administrative departments, or management teams, or even students. So all of them get access to a web-based and to a application version as well. So all of these features and functionalities are available within our solution. And the whole purpose that we're seeing is we're trying to connect the entire ecosystem, because we understand that nothing can take place without a connected ecosystem. And through having the teachers integrated into our platform, we give them the ability to conduct Zoom classes, online examinations. Not only that, we also give them the ability to evaluate exams, as well as create course material and course content. This is really, really important for us as well as for teachers, because teachers will really be then able to drive the effectiveness, the efficiency, the transparency, the communication, as well as the quality of education, which are the 5 pillars that we truly believe in. So looking ahead, just I want to talk about, in terms of collaboration is the key. I want to talk about, just like Hanu was saying, we need to look into public-private partnerships. We need to look at transforming the edtech domain to not being focused on technology, but being focused on education and the impartment of education through the advent of technology. Education is quintessential in uplifting the entire ecosystem, and teachers are truly the stepping stone who can empower, who can truly empower. Through empowerment of our teachers, we can truly engage and utilize these technologies to definitely become a knowledge superpower of the world. So thank you, Amit. I think I've tried to stick within the time limit. I don't know if I have a few more minutes.
Well, you can take 2 more minutes if you wish.
Perfect, perfect. So I just want to talk about, in terms of teachers. So in terms of what we have understood, is the biggest hindrance in terms of the market that we see today is that you can give teachers as much content as they want, you can share as much material as they want, but until the teacher is not self-motivated, until there are not evaluation aspects in check, and until there isn't kind of the transparency taking place across the entire ecosystem, there really isn't going to be that much growth that is taking place on the ground. So we really try to play a key role in getting the teachers empowered, in feeling like they are the owners of the product, they are the owners of the technology, so that, you know, whatever they want to create, whatever they want to undertake, they are our next educators who are going to act not only as guiders, but also as counselors, as well as advisors to the next workforce or the next group of students and people who are entering the employability kind of workforce.
Thank you very much, Rishi. Very interesting perspectives, and I must say, hands-on, based on hands-on experience. I think if I briefly make an attempt to summarize, I cannot really summarize, but just making an attempt. I think online education and the way the market for online education is growing, that has to be kept in mind. And in that sense, also liked the few things that highlighted in terms of what explains the digital divide in the country at the moment. So the key concern, until we have electricity and device and internet, then you don't have the foundational ecosystem ready to build the technology integration. So that has to be looked into. I think the pandemic did force educators who had a lot of inertia in terms of adopting technology. So it pushed them as well to adopt in some form or the other. But in one of our other webinars, the speakers said it was not technology that they were using, it is what can be called panicology, because they were panicking what to do, and therefore they were using whatever they could find at the moment. But that's not the best way of doing it, and therefore it has to be. So the key thing is that whatever finally the experience that we have during this pandemic using technology, how are we going to leverage upon that?
Absolutely.
And when the offline education also starts,
Correct. There has to be
developing
the aspect of online education and technology implementation in our way forward.
developing core competencies is the key. And in that sense, the teachers are the key driver of this entire change. And for them, while we continue to create content, deliver, train, etc., etc., but we have to look into from their perspective as well.
Correct.
And until they're motivated enough, so how do we keep them engaged and motivated? And there I liked, when there is a transparent process, then they feel owner of the initiative and they're engaged, and that has to be taken into consideration, that it is not just technology deployment and training, etc., etc. How do we make all of these stakeholders, and specifically the teachers, the driver of the change?
Absolutely.
Anyways, with all of these, I next move on to our next speaker for the day, Mr. Ali Seth, and who looks into the entire school digitalization process. So the good thing is he's not just looking into content or some ERP technology or something. He looks as a brings very holistic perspective. So Ali ji, all to you for your 8 to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Amit Chandra, Mr. John, Bhanu, and Rishi. Thanks a lot for that lovely input from your side. Now, this is not the first time I'm on the NISA forum and platform. Amit and me have addressed this platform a number of times. And first of all, a very happy new year to all the NISA members. And I hope when we go forward in 2021, we'll see a different perspective of NISA schools and how they become relevant to this outside world. Well, Amitji, see, you started talking about, you showed us a slide about NEP and what they want us to do. I think this we have visited in 2017, when we all came down to Bangalore and we started to talk to each other and said, now it's going to be the transformation, a digital transformation that has to take place across the country. Well, certain schools, the call was made by, I remember collaborating with you, the call was made by y'all and Dr. Kulbhushan Sharma. And then all the NISA members came together. I think we hosted about 147 schools from across the country. And all the leaders, not only the schools, they were all leaders who came and understood what it has to be done. And then we went about evangelizing this entire concept across the country. Now, with the pandemic coming here, people realized that digitalization is very important rather than the physical schooling system. But this entire NEP is not about digitalization or physical school or whatever it is. It is a different type of education system that has been envisaged. Okay. Now, let me tell you a little background on this, how this entire thing is coming up, because people should realize this, because people start from the center and they don't know where to go because there's no vision to go forward. So my main thing is, first, let me explain to you why this NEP is coming to the picture and how this entire thing happened. See, initially there was a Gurukul, the different genres of learning. First was a Gurukul system, okay, wherein the teacher stood in a grove or wherever he wanted to and started teaching the students, and it was all about the ability of the guru. Okay, that was a philosophical system wherein India, China, and Arabs were way ahead of the world. Okay, then came the four walls of the classroom, started by Aristotle. Then the Western society took over the entire progress, and today our education system is not a knowledge age education system; it is a industrial age education system. The four walls of the classroom I'm talking about. Then subsequently, what happened was after the Y2K happened, people started doing a lot of research, especially UNESCO started doing a lot of research, and they said that I think the society has turned a corner. with the Y2K bug, pretty much like the pandemic that we had today, the Y2K bug would have stopped the entire world. All right, the banks wouldn't have worked, the flights wouldn't have taken off, the ship wouldn't have sailed. I mean, the whole world will come to a standstill. At that point of time, people realized that if you're going into the knowledge age, we need to define a new type of education system called the connected learning community. Now, that's when pretty much everything started, actually speaking. Then people like us, Microsoft, and people started evangelizing this connected learning community and started saying that people should start integrating technology into education. Like the first genre of learning was you don't have any infrastructure. The second genre of learning was you need to have at least a building to teach students, and you need to put them in age groups and start teaching them. And now it should be integration of technology. Okay, so you could see once you integrate technology in anything, it becomes a very robust kind of a system. Suppose you see our telecom sector, which really transformed at one point of time, then our banking segment transformed. Today, any shock to the banking system will still survive. So that is the main thing. Now, this should happen to education. And education is the most important thing in a human life, because without education, the people cannot grow. Okay, nothing is going to turn around. So this is very important, and at least I think I congratulate the government to bring in NEP, because they drafted the entire policy around this connected learning community, and what you see, the main points that you read out is totally on that particular perspective. And I think the NISA schools should adopt right now. It's a time to adopt. Okay, now you asked a question saying that NISA schools or the budget private schools versus, let's call it the elite schools, all right? See, today, the budget schools are about, say, I mean, suppose you look at the entire private schools in this country, there are about 4 lakh private schools in this country, actually. Out of which you can count out 22,000 elite schools, all right? The rest are all budget schools. All right, that's a large thing, and it's the aspiration of India today. Budget school is an aspiration of India. How well a student is going to do, or how well a citizen is going to do in the future. Okay, they are an alternative to the government schooling system, but they are a robust schooling system in this country. Anybody who's got an aspiration will put their child into, and they sell the shirt off their back to put the children in these kind of schools. But what should really happen is NISA schools or budget private schools today should start taking this digitalization very seriously. Okay. Now, when you do the digitalization, what does it mean? Where does it start and how does it progress? There are 3 factors in digitalization. First is the management. The management has to make up their mind saying that they want to digitalize the school, and nothing comes free. All right. They need to go for the best available technology to digitalize their school. I don't say the product, I'm talking about technology. All right. Because a lot of products are available in the market, but which is the best technology will help you to transform. And I remember when we conducted the NISA meet in Chandigarh, Mr. Kulbhushan Sharma said, for building a classroom, you'd spend at least 10 lakh rupees. Put half of the money in technology, your schools will progress. Look at the great mind when he thought about it at that point of time and made a comment like that. You should really applaud him for that, right? He had a vision. Once you have decided to adopt a technology, the second portion of it is implement it. Don't ever think where I'm going to find the money for it. You'll definitely can find money. Anybody can. I mean, there are a lot of places where you can find money and get yourself technology woven into a school. That is first portion of it. The second portion of it is train your teachers. I mean, I don't know why we don't spend on our teachers, because like pretty much the medical industry, if there's no nursing, there's no medical industry. Likewise, if there's no teachers, there's no education industry, education segment. So, I mean, Amitji, you won't believe it. I've seen such cases going on in our country. They're bringing people like us, a computer organization, to teach the students. You know, where's the compassion with our guys? We are like robots, right? How do we go and teach the students? I mean, see, what we need to do is first train the teachers and make them as technology or digitally enabled teaching staff. That's the second portion of it. Once you have done that, the third is educate the parent. See, the student is a natural learner. We always talk about student, student, student. Put the student on the street, he'll start learning. You don't have to teach a student. Students are natural learners. But the parents, they're the resistive lot. So you need to tell them the education is going to change and you need to get the education transformed. Now, for instance, I'll tell you one thing. A lot of parents have resisted in this digital education. You know why? Because we didn't tell them properly, saying that what is digital education all about, and digital education can be much better than physical education. And I'm sure if you have told that, the parents would have gone ahead and invested in the devices. They could have invested in internet. What does it cost today? I could give you a device as low as 3,000 rupees and an internet for about, say, 300 rupees every month. And I don't think there's any burden on anybody to have that. But it is just a fad. People do not realize what is it. They're saying that somebody is coming online and just giving some lectures, and that's not digital education. Yes, that is true. You should use the right applications for online education. Okay, online education can be very exciting. You're changing the entire dimension of it. From 2D learning, you're going to 3D learning. You can include AI, artificial intelligence, ML, STEAM learning, STEM learning, bots. You could put in a huge amount of applications there, so the child becomes very interested in the classroom. What did we do? Just opened any communication platform and started teaching students by holding our cameras on hangers. That's not teaching. That's not online teaching, actually speaking. So that's where the resistiveness came in, and that's where the people started becoming disappointed. The digital education can well replace the physical education, completely replace. And who can benefit? See, today, budget private schools cannot compete with the traditional school in terms of infrastructure, physical infrastructure. They can definitely compete with traditional schools with their digital infrastructure. It doesn't cost much. And their teachers are all, used to the traditional way of teaching. Your teachers could be trained fast, quickly. But there's no such plans. That's the unfortunate thing that is happening in our society. If these plans are made properly, if the budget private schools hire or go ahead and make a committee, for instance, I'll tell you, we ran a program for all the schools called a DTHL program, Digital Transformation and Holistic Learning Program. Okay, and we in this program we had three things. One is we trained all the stakeholders of education. Second is we opened up a platform that was a social learning platform for teachers. Third is we graduated the schools into digital schools. Believe it or not, Amitji, we had 4 NISA schools. One was from Goa, that is Sunshine. Second was from Thane, that was St. Mary's. Third one was from Aligarh, which is Blossoms. And fourth one, your own school, okay, Mr. Sharma's school, SBBM school. They all graduated as digital schools. And if that could be done, and we had other schools, we had international schools participating in this program. We had ICSE, CBSE, state board schools. We took a good mixture of all these schools, and about 60 schools graduated, and 4 were NISA schools, budget private schools. Now, I don't see any challenges out here, but it's only who you collaborate with, how you go forward. But the main thing is a mindset. If you really want to change, it's the only mindset that can change. And technology is there. People are there to educate you all. People are there to spend money. And the main thing which comes is devices and internet. Somebody, I think Rishi spoke before me and said that, or Banu spoke and said, India doesn't have a problem about internet. I'll just tell you a small story. One day I was, not before the pandemic, I was going to an ATM and I saw guards in Bangalore sitting there. I went for the ATM and came back and I asked the guard, what are you doing with the phone? He said, sir, मैं बिहार से हूँ और हम अपने बच्चों से बात कर रहे हैं. Okay? That means if there's a will, there's a way. I don't see any problem in investing about 3,000 rupees and 300 rupees on internet, and internet is available everywhere in this country. We can't make those excuses saying that internet is not there, because we have done a survey. And as you know, our footprint is across from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, right? And from Abhor to Meghalaya. We are there everywhere. But we don't see a problem. If you can use a Facebook, you can use a WhatsApp, you can use anything, then you can use devices for teaching. Okay, and of course, I mean, coming back to your funding. I mean, there are a lot of ways of funding this. There are funding from the governments, there are funding from the private guys, there are funding from CSR. I mean, you can go on and on and on, but you have to come as a single group. Start thinking. I think you all should make a committee consisting of all the 4 schools or 5 schools which have gone online and have benefited of this. I wish you all can see the videos where children were speaking in our conference and saying that how much they have benefited out of technology learning. I mean, all these things are very important. And I think budget private schools should make use of this opportunity and transform themselves. And I think, Amitji, I have told my part. Anything is there, you just let me know. I'm willing to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Aliji. Once again, let me make a poor attempt to summarize everything, though you talked about all these ideas that you have even just touched are those big ideas. But certainly one thing is, this is the era of digital transformation, so we cannot skip it. We have to be part of the process. You briefly talked about the history of the development of schooling or education system from Gurukul to classroom model to the industrial age to as we are entering into the knowledge age, and how our education delivery, learning, teaching, all this mechanism also has to kind of change. I really love this quote, which I tweaked and converted into like the budget private schools, as you talked about. Only out of 4 lakhs, let's say 20,000+ will be the elite schools and rest will be the budget private schools. And in that sense, you said, and that is the aspiration class. And so I said, BPS is the aspiration of the masses now. And then you talked about the different factors in the digitalization process. But as an overall, you briefly also brought some of the experience of doing things. So that was also good to get the learning from the hands-on experience. But as an overall,
can I have a last comment?
Yes, please.
Okay. Amit, what I've seen in my entire career is like this. The people from private schools which are educated in India, they go and serve abroad. You know, all of us did that. Private school are the workforce of India. If you educate them, then India is progressing.
Right.
That's
100%. Yes, that's the most important. And this is kind of driving factors for all of us to work in this space. Anyway, but the key thing I would like to take forward from your entire presentation is the main thing is simply the mindset. If we change the mindset, everything is today. Technology is available, product is available, methodology, things are available. It's the money is not problem, technology is not problem, delivery is not a problem. What is the main problem? The main problem is mindset, which I have also been kind of within my own capacity have been trying to address. I see that there is a lot of inertia among educators also towards the change. But anyway, so if there is a will, there is a way, things are available, can be done. And on that note, let me move to our last speaker of the day, Professor Unnat Pandit. And specifically, sir, now from student to teachers to schools, slowly I'm coming to you for looking more in terms of policy aspect. So how do you see in terms of NEP, policy, planning, the government way of planning and delivering an assessment? How do you see the technology, and if there are challenges, do identify and do present some solutions also as to what is your advice, how should we be going forward, so that this BPS, which we are saying the aspiration of masses, could actually benefit from this. All to you, sir.
Thank you, Amit ji. Hope I am audible.
Yes, you are
can hear
audible.
me. Yeah.
Yes.
So, first of all, I have a different view from the previous three speakers. So, pardon me if I counter their submissions, but it's my honest submission on overall building the education system for India. So, keeping this in my mind, just before this, concluding the submission by Mr. Ali, you have mentioned that mindset need to be built. Definitely, I do agree, but I do try to refer the same submission in both the way. Mindset of a school management and school professionals, I would now call it here, and of course the solution provider. Both the people have to have a different ball of game which is happening currently in India. Both have to change their mindset. The strategy which has been applied for digitalization or technology adaptation in the developed country, edtech companies are trying to follow the same strategy for India. Their, of course, their condition, their technological equipped ecosystem or adaptability in school is different, and the standard quality and the affordability for a budget private or government school is different. So there cannot be the same strategy which is applied into the very well established developed country, technology equipped countries, and the same strategy we apply into the Indian schooling system. So there I have a recommendation for all the edtech companies that you need to work on or revisit on your strategy and the offerings as well. See, Indian edtech market is going to approach roughly around 2.2 billion, and thanks to the pandemic outbreak, that digital adaptability has been increased all across the schooling and the education sector. So that has given them a big hope that they can really cater to the mass and, of course, to the class as well. And schools have both mass as well as class in India. So they have to redesign their strategy or change the standing position from where they are approaching to the edtech market in India. China, on a similar note, China has almost $88 billion dollar business. And that's mainly because they are catering to the need which is required by their edtech offering and their schooling system. So why this much difference? Because, and of course, technology adoption in India is more than even in China, but their approach by the edtech company is different from the Indian edtech companies. So this is something where I would recommend that all the Indian edtech company or Indian solution provider need to revisit their strategy. It's not that you have a solution and you are offering your solution to the school and they are adopting. There might happen in 4, 5, 10 or 50, 100 schools. But if you want to have a quantum jump, then think of revisiting your strategy, redesigning your solution, and offer the technological adoption to the schools which is required by them. So currently we are offering a patchwork kind of a solution which is no longer going to sustain in Indian market. if you want to have a long term offering. Like I met one of the startup who is offering a one such stop solution wherein all the requirement which is required by the school is being offered. So they are then having a forward collaboration with the other solution provider if they do not have, and they match the APIs so that nothing changes for the school. And through their solution, one of the French West African countries education system is working. So with small quantum designing a solution according to the local need, they are now serving entire country's education system. And that should be the vision, that should be a far sighted submission which all the edtech companies should follow. And that's the kind of a solution which is again customized, no language barrier, so irrespective of any language complexity, so their solution works. So of course coding and everything is in the traditional mode, but even the French speaking person can easily operate, Urdu speaking person can easily operate, where in Urdu the way it is projected on screen and the typing is different. So I'm taking a two extreme examples. Similarly, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Bangla, Gujarati, Marathi, design a solution which is required. Why the operating system is in English when the your local accounts staff do not require any English? They have to deal with the community, and they are quite sufficient enough. But even though they can operate it into the regional language, and systems can work perfectly, that's part of a academic administration. On a teaching perspective, why the Sanskrit teacher need to learn the English and follow the English for delivering the digital content, when his primary objective is to teach the Sanskrit? So have you ever thought about redesigning the entire solutions? I think it's a time. The national education policy gives us a fresh new perspective wherein we need to offer a solution, or technology adaptability need to be increased in schooling, which is required by the schools. Schools need the solution for a broad online learning. National education policy is referring to 64 kala skills. Where how come schools will have so many teachers? How the hybrid education system can offer this learning opportunity? So schools might have a few standards curriculum running teachers, but for specialized learning, how come this kind of a online learning can be offered? Have you ever thought about this? Career development. Again, I think one of the speaker has also mentioned previously that AI, ML, coding, learning outcome. Do students really need all this solution at this age? The more important is how much the perception towards the learning is getting improved. Design thinking, of course, I strongly advocate that design thinking is important, because that is changing the way student approach to the teaching and learning. And technology adaptive exercise through design thinking will certainly help students and the schools improving their quality and standard. So the five pillar which one of the speaker has mentioned, effectiveness, efficiency, transparency, communication, quality, all these can be achieved with the right perception if we are redesigning our strategy towards approaching the digital offering to the school. So that is most important. Secondly, teachers adaptability to the technology, definitely it is required, and teachers grooming, teachers technology adoption is one of the need of the hour. But similarly, how we can retrofit the solution. So in a country like 130 crore population, how much of a computer or device we are going to install and we are going to offer them? To what extent we want to have this digitalization done in our schooling? Schools might have 1,000 students. Are we prepared to install 1,000 PCs or laptops? No, that's never going to get happen. But what exactly is the solution? Where, up to what extent we want the digital intervention in the traditional schooling? That's one of the one such solution which has been designed with the MHRD's financial assistance is the ample solution, which I have seen through in my previous tenure when I was working at Niti Aayog. That is something where the perfect example of a digital intervention in the schooling. One should again review this, and to all the technology developer, you should again for online or offline or digital intervention, how much is the bandwidth which the schools are going to consume? How far we can design the solutions which consumes the low bandwidth? In each and every attempt, we don't need the high bandwidth solution. That is something HD, ultra HD solutions people are designing, and then that is ultimately leading to the frustration to the schoolings and the teachers and the parents. So up to certain extents, we need to redesign all this developmental work which is happening. And on a government front, definitely I would submit here that incentivization is required on a rural education infrastructure development and to infrastructure upgradation in the budget private schools as well, so that we can encourage the hybrid model of learning. And such infrastructural development may have some incentivization offer through school or through government. And the technology adaptation which we want, of course we need to have the proper match according to the need. And certainly the administration which we are foreseeing, that we should make sure that we are not offering too much industrialized education. The current approach is going towards industrialized education. So industry has a solution and we are adopting this solution to make sure that we are sustaining into this competition of imparting the technology driven solution and technology driven education. Our primary focus is to offer a skill building and knowledge based education system, which is the primary driver of the new national education policy. So we need to adapt the technology according to our need. Not we should be blind enough towards what is offered to us and we are adopting this. That can happen into the banking or telecom sector. But even in banking, now people have started adopting the customized and required solutions. Same thing is happening in telecom sector also. Every company is adopting the technology according to their needs. So why not the education sector also? So this is something which is, of course, gamification, online education, and making it interactive is to the extent is positive. It requires, but timely, we need to make sure that we are adopting a solution which is required by the schools. And we should not buy a solution or hire a solution which is being retrofit for or customized for all other offerings which is happening in the Western world. Our primary focus through schooling is building a culture, adopting the education, and in doing this, of course, the scale and the government support is going to be the primary and catalyzing effect. One such a recommendation, of course, that might not be currently in a SOS need, but yes, in future, government which is going to offer the B.Ed in a 4 years dual degree program, which is again going to be a welcoming one. And for our teachers who are currently into the service in a budget primary school or a government school, I think certain association need to make sure that they also offer certain weekend programs so that teachers can build their skills and that can help them in meeting the expectation by the schools, school management, and the parents as well. And of course, the 64 kalas which are mentioned, skills which are mentioned, for all futuristic gurus need to again adapt all this technology and skill building with due technological adaptation in discharging this kind of a or education to the students. And still students have a high respect for their teachers, and nothing harm if students have a better technology adaptation, have an open mind and learn from them as well. This is something which is a perception where student teacher relationship need to redefine through a technology intervention. And I'm quite positive that India will have a changing or grossly I can say that we will have a we see the vertical shift into the schooling and the education system after the implementation of a national education policy. And in one of the talk which wherein I came to know that various other countries also following the Indian footprints, and developing countries specifically, they are going to adopt the new national education policy offered by the India. And that is something which is a change which is going to get happen. And on a policy and strategic perspective, we have put a right narrative through new national education policy. And on both the front, again, it would be a repeat, but for the edtech companies and for the schools, both have to change their standing position and see the new national education policy from a different perspective. So many offerings are there, so many visionary steps are recommended, but only the thing we need to approach it in right narrative. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Unnat Pandit. Ji, I think you have raised certain very relevant points that we need to not just think now, but need to continue thinking and find solutions and answer. I think these are very useful points, I must say. But once again, let me make a small attempt to summarize everything that you talked about. Is number one, this thinking from the China and India perspective. China roughly has $88 billion market, and India roughly has only $2.2 billion market, while the technology adoption, as you said, is possibly, I don't know, but possibly better in India. It's faster in India. Next thing is, I think overall your emphasis was that, okay, we might be designing products and solutions, once again, without understanding the circumstances, context, need, user preference, behavior. So maybe we need to redesign this entire thing, re-strategize, rethink about all the solutions that we are providing. In fact, this further kind of builds up my own observation, as once I said that multiple edtech companies that I have known, I found that those companies which came from like the technology heavy perspective in education, they couldn't do as well, wherein those who are education companies or education organization, and when they thought of integrating technology, they did comparatively better. Once I have also found in terms of administration. It, in Haryana, I was speaking with a school leader, and he said they too have to comply with many norms and submit the detail of students, etc. And he said that. So I was asking about how is his experience when the process has been digitalized, and I was shocked with his answer when he said, earlier we used to do only manual. So manually we used to create all of these papers and datas and had to submit it. Now we are submitting online as well and offline as well, both. So online has not replaced offline. Why? Because of maybe further the same kind of need that the babu and the clerk who is sitting, who understand the Hindi language manual, he does not know. So while it has been mandated, so you do it, but once again you also submit here as well. And therefore, so actually once again it re-emphasizes, do we understand our context and user the best? Like what you said, there is a Sanskrit teacher, he knows Sanskrit, his job is to teach Sanskrit. Now why he has to once again either learn or know English language to use your interface? So maybe yes, all of these points are wonderful points. So need to redesign, rethink, re-envision, understand your user and context and all of that. The second important point I take from you is thinking about that hybrid education model, wherein how do you bring best of both the worlds, offline and online, and technology and education and teachers, and there is interchange and interconnectivity and shift, smooth shift, not like it's like a divide, but a very smooth integration. As an overall, then I also started thinking like, we did, this is the sixth the webinar in NEP series, but the other series what we discussed, what is the key emphasis of the education policy, and that we too, all of us have been talking about, is mainly how do we move from standardized learning towards more and more customized and personalized learning. And in that case, we need to understand not just students, that this is the nature of students, but each of the students. So how do we take our technology, our intervention, our programs, our solutions to each of the child, and then only we'll be able to ensure kind of everyone learns. It's not like 20%, 30%, 80% kids are passing, but it's like the 100% achievement. So everyone learns, everyone grows. The other thing, now how do we move forward? Moving forward, great one, I think it's a wonderful idea, is in terms of incentivizing the digital infrastructure development, both in everywhere, the government schools, private schools, rural areas, urban areas, and specifically in that case, budget private schools. I do see it can do the magic if we are able to incentivize them well. Thinking from the skill and knowledge based education. That is the key, and how are we designing all our solutions? And certainly we do see the future in days to come, in years to come, there is going to be a vertical shift in education space. Now the question is left to all of us, the educators and the technology providers. Are we getting ready? And how do we get ready? Now here is time for a few questions. The questions I have received, once again, it is towards the personalized education. So I don't know who would like to answer this. How do we, over a period of time, achieve this idea of delivering more and more personalized learning to the kids? Anyone who would like to make an attempt?
I will come here, Amit.
Please.
Regarding the personalized learning.
Mm-hmm.
See, what we're trying to do in technology is all about personalized learning. The connected learning community is all about personalized learning. On a physical front, it's very difficult to give personalized learning because the teacher is dealing with number of students in a classroom, or on online platform also number of students. But when you implement the AI and the ML and cognitive learning inside the learning system, learning management system, then the personalized learning happens. I was on another show. They were talking about the similar thing we're talking about. They wanted to give some kind of they wanted to personalize the learning, and the personalized learning only could happen through technology platforms. Otherwise, that's why for personalized learning, we should send our children to tuition classes and various kind of things so that a student understands the subject. Or rather, there's an emotional requirement also in that particular thing. But here, personalized learning could happen very well because of because of the technology platform. And I'll tell you one thing, Amit. Please be very clear about these things. In India, we cannot put a wet blanket on progress. That is very, very important. Let me tell you on this forum and at your on your program that please take off those wet blankets. Please see the sunshine at the end of. Please see the light at the end of the tunnel. And India, I'll tell you. I mean, let me just take 1 minute of you and tell you. See, when we used to start playing cricket, it was always the Rajas and Maharajas game. Okay. Today you see where the players are coming from, all from upcountry and villages. You can see a good example of the best captain I think you had the world ever had was Dhoni. He didn't go to Cambridge and Oxford to study. All right, you see the other captains, all of the captains went to Oxford and Cambridge to study, but this guy was a brought up and was a desi guy. Okay, as you can call it. I mean, for want of any better word. So I'm telling you, give our children a chance. Open the platforms to them, and you see what would happen. Indians can are see the two things about Indians they have got. One is creative thinking and critical thinking. This is the two important things for the 21st century. All right, and the whole of India will change. But if you keep on putting wet blanket and say that we can't do this, we can't do something else, we are the greatest, that is not going to take place. The only thing you can do is see that give this generation a chance. Okay.
Great.
Thanks a lot, Amit.
Thank you.
I would just like to add a small
Yes,
another
please.
angle to personalization, right?
Mhm.
I mean, when we look at personalization, there are multiple layers of personalization. So one is about the personalization when it comes to the style of learning, right? And in terms of equity and breaking the gender biases and all that stuff, there is another layer of personalization. Like, for example, when I have to learn about careers, what careers could I pursue? What professions are there in the market? If you look at some of the way the books are written, there are stereotypes. Like, a pilot can always be a man in the story, right? But there is a lot of work which is required to happen even on the content side, particularly that we work with publishers and storybook publishers. We constantly work with them and provide feedback where, the there is personalization even in the content, not just in methodology, right? So how can there be a story or a set of books which encourage girls or girl child to think about gender neutrality in professions? So there is that angle of profession personalization which should not be forgotten while we are having this conversation.
Perfect. The second question,
if-
and since we are
I may
exceeding,
just a
yes,
minute.
please. Yes,
If
please,
I
sir.
may get 30 seconds.
Yes,
See,
yes,
in
yes.
personalized education, I think technology intervention can play a big role here. Because in personalized education, we would be in position to know where the students are facing the difficulties. And this technology here is going to be a blessing. And right intervention will help understanding the student's problem. Like student has a problem in understanding the apple falling from top, and Newton's law. Then similar example, we would be in position to identify that coconut is also falling and mango is also falling, and multiple examples can be given to such a student who has a understanding in a specific difficulty in understanding such a problem, and such a learning deficiency we could be in position to identify with technology intervention. And here I think the role of tech developers come into the picture, and these kind of solutions will help schooling to improve on a quality and personalized learning.
Mhm.
Great. And next question that I have, and once again, I think Unnat Pandit ji, you should be the best person to answer because you have opened this discussion. This is on incentivizing the digital infrastructure itself. So how? Is there some idea with you or in the policy space or the government as to what is the thinking around how it can be done?
Frankly, I don't have a immediate answer, but certainly there is a need on incentivizing the uh, technology infrastructure in the schooling. And many state governments are, because education is the state subject, so many state governments have taken up the initiative in ensuring that their government and budget schools are better equipped with the digital infrastructure. And particularly on a government schools, state governments have taken up very bold initiatives. Maybe I should quote here the example on UP, Gujarat, Maharashtra, even Rajasthan
Rajasthan.
has explored this kind of opportunities for building the infrastructure, but that's also not too much. So many things need to be done, and I think on a back end technology adoption we need to work. Front end, of course, this is not going to offer a change, but on a back end we need a better solutions. And when I say that teachers need to equip with the digital solution, so just giving a training won't serve the purpose. Teachers should have a learning management system on their hand. They need to have a classroom engagement solutions. They need a study tools. They need a language learning tools. They need the course material designing tools. All these are different, though it looks like a similar solutions. But learning analytics, again, nobody talks about the learning analytics, and edtech solution provider need to think on those lines. And of course the next generation schooling, how this is going to get happen, and slowly steadily, maybe in a multiple phase, they need to redesign their strategy, and schools also need to redesign their strategy in phase wise manner, how we are going to foresee the change in next 5 years, 10 years in our schooling. And that's the right narrative which is going to be a resulting impact of a national education policy. And through such a intellectually rich deliberations, submissions happening on such a platform through NISA and various other agencies and Bharatiya
Thank
Shikshan Mandal.
Hmm. Thank you, sir. I think here was the concern flagged to me because we know that there has been emphasis. For an example, Rajasthan was doing this digital infrastructure, Andhra, Telangana. So state governments, but all their interventions so far have been with the government schools. And here, budget private schools specifically feel left behind. So that is where if something in terms of incentivizing and motivating, engaging them in the process could be done, will give a big boost.
Maybe the institutional framework like NISA should come forward and at least in a schooling or with the local state government, they need to make a submission. This
Yeah.
is going to be the futuristic need, and incentivization need to be encouraged here. And of course, COVID-19 has put us into the different situation, but of course, slowly, steadily, things will come to the normal. And in India, we have almost approached to the normal, and schooling has also been, might be from the next academic year, it will be in a normal mode. But we should not forget of offering the hybrid education, because
Right.
again, this is going to be the new normal into the school education.
Perfectly. Yes, yes. In fact, within our circle also, we have been talking that now this technology and hybrid model has to stay, because pandemic gave us one lesson, but there is even, too much of winter, cold waves, or, loo chal rahi hai, or rats ho gaye, or whatever hote hain. The first thing is to be done is schools to be shut down. And that leads to learning loss. So now schools have to be always prepared with the technology readily available. Anyways, because I have taken too much of time, there is one final question and then we simply close it down. And this question is also very, obvious. Whenever we talk about technology, the other part of the concern happens to be about the safety, security, privacy, cyber threat. So when kids are engaging, how do we ensure that their privacy, their engagement, it's all safe? Anyone who would like to address this?
Yeah, I would like to.
Okay, so first Bhanu and then Rishi.
Yeah. So I think there are 2-3 things to keep in mind. I mean, when it comes to privacy, one is the regulatory framework itself, which there is a little bit of catching up to do for India. Having worked, World Leader is there in around 47 countries, like I said, and in a lot of these countries, things are there, not there, semi there in terms of privacy, right? So for example, to count as an organization, we have chosen to adapt the European GDPR right now, primarily because there is a lack of structure and reference in other markets. And anyway, it's a high bar, right? One is to look at that. The second aspect is to the privacy has to be a part of the design of the solution, right? Earlier, privacy is just kind of a thing which you add after you've built your solution, just to tick in the box. But as you go forward, we are already looking at various tactics in terms of how privacy could be a part of the design, and from the get-go, things are designed from a privacy perspective, and also not only privacy but also learner rights. There are some, learner is also an individual, and a learner has his or her rights, though it is a child. We have to understand that ethical line as well. Now, coming back a little bit to India here, there is a specific body of work which is very, very aggressively already happening in terms of what the privacy policy would look like. Like NEP has been rolled out, that policy, I think, the drafts are expected to already roll out in 2021. And we have to look forward to what that is. And more important than not, if we look at the macro market, there is already a ton of information which, just by virtue of us being available on a mobile network, we are already sharing, right? Now, again, I would refer to what Ali Seth was talking about. The privacy is a whole long journey for a market like India. And to start with, we should not be standing with wet blankets to throw on the whole thing, but to allow things to happen and then slowly come and look at where all the leak points are there and kind of force the system and providers to fix them, right? So it's a very contentious topic, and particularly when it is children, then it's even more contentious. So we hope to look for a rigorous policy to come up, but that is something which we are waiting to hear and see.
Great.
Absolutely. Yes, I
Please,
completely
Rishi.
agree with Bhanu as well. I think we also do follow the GDPR, so that's what I was going to talk about as well. But I think what is really important is that that framework needs to be created in tandem with global frameworks, so we really can understand in terms of child protection of data what can be utilized. So currently in our existing solution, what we're doing is we completely encrypt the data. So we don't have any access to it, or we don't have anything to it. Even if it's managed on our servers, it's completely encrypted so that nobody can access it except the admin or the management or that one user who's authorized. But just like Banu was saying, it's very, very crucial. I think it's quintessential that a framework is in place that not only protects children's data, but it also protects the data across all stakeholders. And in India, especially right now, it's always looked at as an afterthought. Like every school that I approach, or every kind of university or institution that we're approaching, the ground reality is that everyone will want to see my solution. They want to understand what is the product, and how can it revolutionize their kind of processes or operational processes. But at the same point in time, then their last afterthought will be like, okay, but in terms of security, what do I do? So I think educating the market, creating this understanding of data security, data protection laws, and data privacy, this is really, really crucial. And we need not only the stakeholders of management and administrative departments to be aware, but we also want stakeholders like parents to kind of be aware and give their inputs into their policies as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Rishi. Now going back to John. John, because we have already kind of extended the timeline of this webinar, you can take 2 minutes and deliver your thank you note.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. First of all, this NEP and technology integration in budget private schools. This webinar is wonderful, really. We never thought of this technology integration before this pandemic. This pandemic has forced to do go and search in the market what are the best things available, and with the things available to reach the children in various ways, online and offline ways. And see this ICT earlier it is ET, education technology. The term started to India, that is around 72, and they have done so many pilots around 84 and 85. MHRD has given the guidelines and policies they took up from 2010. Still, we are searching for this ICT to integrate it with the NEP. In that, we have a wonderful moderator, Dr. Amit Chandra, a friend, and he has done great job with RT earlier. And nice to see him with this wonderful webinar series of 6 today, counted with along. So thank you, Dr. Amit Chandra, for a wonderful moderator as on today, being a moderator. And then I come to Bhanu Kota, the world reader. I remember him when I met in Delhi. I asked a question to him that it's a watching era or a reading era. It seems to be a watching era. It's not a reading era. So in order to how it will help you, this program, and really they have come up with so many wonderful solutions. So thank you, Banu, for participating in such a great event and wonderful deliverance of your ideas to us. And Plus One Smart School and Rishi Kapoor is come up with the end-to-end solution. No, you won't buy a new solution apart from this. He said it's a wonderful idea to have a panelist and a great thing. And Ali said, my friend, and he said about the digitalization of classrooms and this thriving force of India is the budget school. Thank you so much for the word and concerned word. I also believe just give and see. You say a word convincingly. Last you said a word that just give and see. Don't hesitate and don't pretend not to give that. Just give and see what happens. Then we can decide. And with the great experience and expertise, Professor Dr. Unnit Pandit has given so many strategies today for us, even for this technology. He means the service providers and other entrepreneurs to customize and give the solution, to tailor it in a way that the school wants. Even they are also ready, sir. They want to give it first, and if it is not cooperating well. I hope they will customize and redesign and they will tailor according to it, sir. It is not a problem, I think so. So thank you for a wonderful, great day with a great webinar. And I'll also thank Ashok Tagore, my friend, was to deliver the thank note, and he has not been there because of the signal problem. So thank you everyone, and thank you very much for the whole team of NISA and this Mandal for arranging a great seminar. Thank you everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone. Next Sunday, we'll meet once again for the next webinar. Thank you. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.